Welcome back to season 3 of Titans of Foodservice. I'm your host, Nick Portillo, and I'm excited to continue to take you, on our Across America in 50 Weeks tour, where I interview one Titan of Foodservice from every state in the country. This is getting exciting. So, this week, I'm highlighting the beautiful state of Arkansas. I have the pleasure of speaking with none other than Johnny Hughes. Johnny is the former senior vice president and 31-year executive at Tyson Foods. In the conversation, we talk about when he started at Tyson, they were around maybe $4 billion, and now they're worth over $50 billion, which is astronomical. It's huge. But for those of you who may not be as familiar with Tyson Foods, Tyson is an American multinational corporation. They're based there in Springdale, Arkansas. And the company is the world's second largest processor and marketer of chicken, beef, and pork, just after JBS. So, in the interview, Johnny and I discuss his remarkable career in food service. He started in operations at Tyson before moving into sales, which you'll hear more about when we get into the conversation. That really helped him out in his career because he had the trust and the ability, the trust of the customer as to what he was talking about, and the ability to go deeper into how the product is made and all the little details that someone may look for, which really helped him in his sales career. But in the conversation, he also shares insights on how he built his network and the power of positivity in growing within the food industry. I think you're going to find that overall his positivity and his personality, it's infectious. He just makes you feel good when you're talking to him. And I was joking with him. I'm not sure we caught this in the episode, or maybe it was before. So him and my dad used to work together many years ago. And when I was growing up, my dad represented Tyson Foods, and I knew who Johnny Hughes was before I even set foot into my food service selling shoes, which is pretty cool to know that I knew this man before I had ever directly met him. So pretty cool. Now, before I go any further into the conversation with Johnny, I wanted to take a moment to explore the unique food service scene in Arkansas. So Arkansas, it's known for its southern hospitality and rich culinary traditions. It also boasts a diverse food service landscape. The state is renowned for its barbecue. I mean, it's got to be, with mouth-watering smoked meats that are a staple at many local eateries. Arkansas is also famous for its catfish, often served fried to perfection, and its farm-to-table movement, which emphasizes fresh, locally sourced ingredients. From charming diners to upscale restaurants, Arkansas offers a culinary experience that reflects its cultural heritage and natural bounty. And without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome Johnny. All right, Johnny, welcome to the Titans of Food Service, man. I appreciate you coming on and joining me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm looking forward to it, Nick. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. So I know you're a big Arkansas guy, but what's that jersey behind you?
Oh, yeah, it's a great story. Thanks for asking. My daughter, Avery, actually, a lot of people see that, Nick, and they ask me if it's my jersey. So, no, it's not my jersey. My daughter was fortunate enough to play college basketball. So she played out of Bentonville High School and played 4 years at the University of Arkansas. And so upon her graduating and leaving, that's the jersey that they presented her with.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. Have you guys been watching the Olympics at all?
We've been watching not only the Olympics, but we're, obviously early adopters to the women's athletics and programs. And so we've been following women's sports and the Olympics, but really, a lot of these players right now that are making the headlines, at least in the WNBA. And those were, we've seen a lot of those players. We've played against those players. And so it's really kind of fun to see that explode. But yeah, we're huge supporters of not only women's athletics, but love all sports in the Olympics.
Amazing. That's so cool. Well, I mean, I think I could probably talk to you an hour about. I have a good friend that went to University of Arkansas, and he lives here in Southern Cal. He was part of their engineering program.
Okay.
And now he's in what kind of engineering? Landscape architect. Not engineering, architect.
Okay.
Landscape architecture. And I think they got a great program there for that.
They do. Yeah, it's a great spot. We've lived here a long time, but big supporters of the Hogs well before Avery had a chance to go there. And, we could get in more about that later, but there's a lot of business analogies. She was actually a preferred walk-on for 2 years and that's what she chose to do. And for those of you that know about that, that's a tough road to hoe. And after 2 years, she was put on full scholarship. So that
Wow.
moment was really rewarding for her. And but yeah, we could talk about Arkansas, at least athletics and sports.
Sure.
I could talk about it forever. But that's
Definitely.
the little story behind the jersey.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So tell me, how did you get into the food service business?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, Nick. And, as I got out of college, I started with Tyson Foods right out of college. And I actually started out in operations. So I was 6 or 7 years in poultry operations. And a few of the people that I got to meet, which maybe we'll talk about building a network and stuff as we go here, but I did build a network and I got an opportunity from interesting story. A customer that was in our plant, the salesperson responsible for that account, I spent a lot of time with because we were obviously customizing a lot of things for this customer. And that's how I actually got into food service. So this salesperson said to me one day, right, hey, you might have a career, in sales. And of course, I'm in operations, and I'm thinking, whoa, that's foreign to me. But that was I started with Tyson in April of 1992, and in and around 98 or 99, I actually moved into sales. And when I did get into sales, it was in food service. And so that was really my first kind of foray, if you will, into food service.
Did you always think you'd end up in food service, or did you think you'd be somewhere else?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be in operations. I actually really liked it. I started out on as they say the shop floor. My first job was actually on night shift as a
Yeah.
first line supervisor. So I enjoyed it. I had no issues. I loved the team. So much involved in running, an operation. But once I got into sales, and I think some of the people that were helping build my career probably saw a little more, back then in myself, than I saw. And once I got into the sales, and I actually came through sort of almost like sales support, so I was able to kind of understand it a little bit before truly getting into it. But you know, once sales got into my blood, but more importantly, once food service got into my blood, that set off the balance of my 25 years in food service at Tyson.
So you start off in operations, you learn kind of that process, and you move over into sales. How did you actually learn how to be a salesperson? Because it's you have your personality and your demeanor. You're very friendly. You're very open. You're easy to talk to. But how did you learn how to sell?
Well, it's kind of interesting when you say that, because I think a lot of times when I talk to people today about selling, I think we don't realize that we're constantly selling, and I think that we have, no matter the industry that you're in, you always are trying to deal with people in a certain way. You're always trying to cultivate a team environment. You're trying to be detailed oriented, right? It takes a lot, and so as I began to see honestly, the excitement, the winning. I love to win. We're all competitive. And, I learned early on that selling starts when you hear the first no, right? And so
Mhm.
overcoming objectives and understanding truly what the customers were about. But how I began to learn it was, I really did just much like operations. I started out in a sales role that was very beginner. I was didn't know anything about it, and I asked a lot of questions, but I really did understand. Um, Maybe one of the first sales calls that we might get into that I ever went on was I leaned on my operations experience because,
Hmm.
in this environment, it does come into play a lot about how things are made and handled. And in our business, animal husbandry and how things. So I really did know and understand the operations side really helped me. But I had a great team of people, again, that saw a lot more in me than I did. But that's really how I got started. And then from there, I just, really, really enjoyed the
Sure.
selling cycle.
You touched on the sales ops helping you on the sales side. Tell me how did that branch over? How did that manifest itself in a sales environment.
Yeah, and I think today's environment, it's really hard coming out of college to think about going to work in an operation.
Hmm.
But I would still say the more experience you can get inside of that to understand it, even if that's not where you work full time, it helps. And here's why. As you know, in our business, especially in the food and food service, there are issues, right? And things happen. There's all kinds of stories out there of how things are made and what kind of equipment and people. But when you have an opportunity to see the people doing the work and putting their brand behind it, you also can sell with confidence that you know how things are. And, we would get questions around certain things and I would get called, right? Johnny, come here and talk to this person and once I explain that I've spent many, many, many hours dealing with the situation, we could get real specific. So the confidence that a customer would have and the ability to talk about how things are made, that I've seen it, I've
Hmm.
done it, I've lived it, and I can either help solidify a point that was being made or maybe even bust a myth that, is out there about how things are done. And so I had no idea, right, going into it, that I would learn so much, not only about how to sell, but just the whole aspect of team and how things get done in an operation. So I wouldn't trade that experience for the world.
Yeah, I bet. Tell me, when you started at Tyson, where were they at the time? If you look at present day Tyson, they're gigantic, multi-billion, huge. I mean, everybody knows the brand. Whether you're in food or not, you know what Tyson is. So where was it at when you started in your career?
Yeah, walking through 3 decades, of Tyson Foods, there's been a lot of change, and the family has always been one of acquisition. And so, as I came on in early '90s, the Holly Farms acquisition was just sort of in the books, and that was mid to late '80s, I believe. So, as you fast forward, and I'll probably get the sales figure wrong, but I remember crossing over 8 billion and thought that, the celebration would never be repeated. It was such a big deal to hit the 8 billion, milestone. And then you fast forward it through the '90s and the acquisition of IVP in like '02. And then, you fast forward it to like a Hillshire acquisition in 14 and 15. And now I think publicly they'll state low 50s, 52, 53 billion in revenue. So seeing all of those changes was also very, very cool, right? As part of my career. But yeah, to see and oh, by the way, not to say only selling chicken, but remember back then we were not a multi-protein, not a multi-channel. We were not near as diversified in our portfolio. And so I think about the complexity back then. It seemed like we had enough to do. And when I left, I was like, oh my gosh, we have all these categories now, but seeing that growth. But yeah, I think it was around that. I can remember us going to that 4 to 8 billion, and then all of a sudden, it really, really took off from there.
What about for you personally? As you're going through all of that, your company is acquiring other companies, and I'm sure those companies have people that are in maybe similar positions to you. How do you bridge that gap? And continue to move up in your career.
Yeah. And as I look back on that, I know like I've now had more people sort of talk to me about how difficult that must have been
Yeah.
when in fact I was enjoying it, I was loving it, and I embraced it. And I didn't really realize the amount of change that was going on because the goal was to incorporate a team of people into the culture that I believe, at least in food service, was um, well respected and not at the top, but just well respected. And I took great pride in that. So my goal and objective was to reach out and come on in and what value can you add? What stories do you have, right? So we were really about the incorporation of taking the best, understanding their sales, understanding how that folded in, understanding their culture, understanding. So as I look back, I never really took it as a threat. I took it as, hey, we're growing And if we're growing, I'm growing, and there's plenty of opportunities to succeed. And that's another thing that's happening right now is that the opportunities are galore. I mean, they're just I can't even name all the opportunities, and that's what I think in today's world, as you see this change, but you see it as an opportunity. That's the way I took it, and I never really looked at it as a threat. I looked at it as an opportunity.
Yeah. You wanna hear a funny story? It's like a story of coincidence. In So I know you met my dad, what, maybe early 2000s when he
Yeah.
was, maybe even late 90s when he was at Food Sales West, because I know they
Right.
represented Tyson for many years. For many of the years growing up, Tyson, we
Yeah.
had it in our freezer and that's what we ate. So I knew it somewhat decently. And when I got into college, I joined a fraternity and I went to a conference for the fraternity. It was called Phi Delta Theta, and um, the conference was in St. Louis. And I get there, you go through the whole conference, and at the end, every kid, every member, I guess, all across the country, every chapter across the country had one representative. And then you get the name of some donor or somebody who's given money or whatever. And the guy that I got was John Tyson. So I had to write John Tyson a thank you letter. I'm like, wow, what are the odds of
Okay.
this? This is crazy. I'm like, this is perfect. They gave you like a script to write, and so that
Yeah.
was pretty cool. But I was just like, it really is a small world.
It is a small world, and that's a great story. And I know there's so many of those out there. But anytime we start talking about food service, it's such a small community. It really is, and that's the other thing going into it that obviously I did not know, but now looking back on it, and people say today is like, my gosh, how do you know all these people? And I'm like, well, you spend a lot of time with them,
Yeah.
and that's part of the part that I like. But great story, and I've got, as you can imagine, a few stories after 31 years,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
that's an awesome story.
Tell me about the value of building your network. I know that you have a pretty wide network. I mean, I knew of your name before I even met you, before I even got into the food business. I didn't think I was going to ever be in the food business, but I knew, who you were just of my dad talking about you. So tell me about building your network.
Yeah, it's and much like you said with your dad and the company, and we just really spent a lot of time getting to know people. And I know that sounds so cliche, and but it's so true. And I can tell stories that I remember of Food Sales West. I still know a lot of people that even worked there for your dad and Dave and others, and I'm still connected to people that I worked with in the facilities 30 years ago, run into them and know them. And I think it comes down to spending the time to get to know people, understand their story, understand where they're from, understand what makes them tick, and then be a little vulnerable, And I think that's one of the things about me. I've got a lot of sayings, but one of them is I don't really take myself that serious, but I certainly take the business serious. I like to have fun. There's no reason that we can't get along. So as I look back in building that network, little did I know that really became the backbone of creating a network of people that you just never know, right? When either someone needs something or you need something. I spent a lot of time in listening and trying to treat people right, and I believe that carried throughout my career. But we got results too. And I think that's something, if you go back in the 90s and the 2000s, I think you would hear that it was not one way. It wasn't my way. It was our way. And, your dad and the company, we would work together,
Yeah.
right? We would not go at this apart. We knew together we were way better. And so I got to know people and I understand relationships, and I actually flourish. I love it, and I'm around people all the time. They're like, my gosh, how do you know so many people? And then I can tell certain stories about everybody, but that's just part of it. And I enjoy it. That's really how I built out, the network. And, I do spend some time, and I have spent some time mentoring people, and it's every opportunity is an opportunity to
Yeah.
network.
Yeah.
Right? I think sometimes I'm not really here to do that. I'm here to accomplish a task. And I think you might miss the opportunity to understand what really is a networking opportunity.
Yeah, that for sure. You never know, especially as you're, mentioning that the industry it is small and there's so many. I mean, there's great people in here, but once you get in, you don't leave. So you never
Right.
know. It's always important to be networking, be friendly, be nice to people, and you never know what that person can be, or even their influence, things like that. It's important to get out there and network. It's definitely helped with our business, and I'm sure with you and your career.
It's so true. And you build up those relationships that matter, right? They're your friends. You may not be working together today. And, I've got very recently a former customer that I've known for years. We literally had a conversation about some things that are upcoming that he was asking, my advice on. And I'm like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool. So my dad, when I first got into the business, he gave me a bag, and we had some products that I took out, and I was walking down Pacific Coast Highway here in California, and just going restaurant to restaurant. And he used to tell me this like a phrase. I think it was like segment, concentrate, and dominate. Have you ever heard of that phrase before? He goes, "It was an old Tyson thing."
Matter of fact, if I got distracted and pulled down the book from the Tyson company, you'll see that in there.
Yeah. Essentially like, pick an area, right? So that's what I would do. Concentrate on it, and then, essentially just continue to call on that area until you kind of knock each one down. And so that was kind of my early approach of just trying to learn this business.
Yeah, it still holds true today, honestly. And I talked just very recently about channels, which are
Yeah.
important. You have customers, and then you have categories. And what I like to do is somehow build a matrix to say, look, here are my key categories. Here are the channels that we think those can play in, and then here are the customers that are tied to that. Kind of another way of saying, take a segment,
Yep.
concentrate on it, and then win. That's really what the domination is like, well, let's win at this. And I think sometimes that I appreciate you bringing that up from well over 30, 40 years ago. And the simplicity in that
Hmm.
is, back in the day, there were meetings where, Don Tyson would come in occasionally. And that's probably where that came from. He just said, this is how simple this is going to be.
Yeah.
I think in today's world, we've got data all around us. We're
Hmm.
never off, right? We've got these devices that are on 24/7.
That's
And I
right.
think sometimes we can overcomplicate it, Nick. I think we can make
Hmm.
things appear to be a lot harder. We can get overwhelmed. And I think sometimes if you step back and maybe reiterate that, hey, let's just kind of focus right here. Let's understand it. Like, let's concentrate. I have to kind of know my business, right?
Yep.
And then let's get a couple wins. You'll be amazed at sort of how that blossoms from there. So it still holds true today. It's a great saying. It's one that's been around for a while. And so your dad was smart to kind of adopt that early on.
Yeah. And you're right with the data that we have nowadays. It's it can have you going in 1,000 different ways. College universities, casinos, restaurant chains, but maybe you only need to just find one segment in a specific area and just focus on it. Um,
So true. So
because
true.
sometimes when you're all over the place, you're diluting your efforts, and it's hard to. You can
Yeah,
maybe feel like
some
you're running in place.
exactly, Nick. Some call it boiling the ocean, right? There's this
Yeah,
big opportunity when in fact you can kind of sell more to a current customer or get focused on a specific area. It does help you start to get started and can really grow. I've done that all my whole career.
yeah. So as someone that has I've driven through Arkansas. I've never been to Arkansas, but I think a lot of people when they think of Arkansas, they think of like the big companies that are there. Tyson, the Walton family. I think what JB Hunt is maybe there.
Right.
What is that like in your state? Are they like the biggest employers there? For whatever reason, I've always just thought of those like huge companies that are there.
Well, being from here and traveling all over, I would get occasionally asked, but maybe it's my accent, but where are you from?
Yeah.
And I would ask, have they ever been to Arkansas? And so most of the time it's a no. But in this Northwest corner, at least, you hit it right with the university, Walton family, the Tyson family, the Hunt family, and their stories where J.B. Hunt, Don Tyson, and Sam Walton would be sitting at a restaurant, years ago. And I'm just thinking, wow, what an amazing, I'd love to be kind of a fly on the wall for that. But that's the Northwest corner. But we are the natural state, and we have people that are moving here. Do some research, right, on Bentonville, Arkansas, and
Okay.
you'll be amazed. It's the number one mountain biking. Now, I think you would find cities in Colorado, and then you're going to see Bentonville, Arkansas, and you're like, what? It's on the map. People are coming from all over to do mountain biking in Northwest Arkansas. And the Walton family have Crystal Bridges. It's the largest collection of North American art in the world. It's amazing. So I think this little Northwest Arkansas or Northwest corner is interesting. But what the story is you can't get people to move here, but when you do, you can't get them to leave. It really is a natural state. There's lakes, there's rivers, there's hunting, fishing. The food scene is improving. Little Rock, it really is. Not trying to oversell it. I just think it might be a little
Yeah.
different what people maybe expect. And I think it takes someone coming here to experience that.
What about the food scene? How was that like there in Arkansas?
Yeah, well, first of all, just a couple of facts. I know maybe, some people might know this, some people may not, but it is the number one producer of rice. So I don't know if people
Oh,
know that, but Arkansas is the number one producer of rice. Spinach, who would have ever thought, right? 60 million pounds of spinach are canned here. And if you remember way back, Popeye, there used to be this can that he was, right, 60 million pounds. We're known for, there's a farm in South Central Arkansas that does tomatoes and bell peppers, and guess who they service? It's a large QSR called Subway. People probably wouldn't realize that tomatoes are a big commodity here. There's two more. One, and I'll get to the food scene. One, cheese dip. Go to cheesedip.net. There's a 20-minute documentary, and I guess in 1935, that's where it started in Arkansas. But the other thing is Tyson Chicken Nuggets, the largest producer, and marketer of. So again, a lot of people may or may not realize the amount of food that actually, an agriculture state is pretty powerful, and all four quadrants of the state are all a little bit different. The food scene, the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, there's so many things around small, we call it, Nick, mom and pops, right? Those are the best restaurants. Go find them. They've been there for years. They serve a clientele. Their stories galore. Fayetteville, Siloam Springs, Little Rock, down south in Camden, El Dorado, like the food scene. But in Bentonville, this area, because of the Walton grandkids and where they're headed with a company, they've invested so much in what's starting to look like urban cities, and for us that are here, doesn't look like when I moved here, but we enjoy it. There's new flavors. There's new, the diversity of all kinds of things going on in Northwest Arkansas. It's unlike, I think, what people may have a perception about.
yeah.
Really, really pretty cool and growing, and it's just a great area to be in.
That's amazing. Looking back on your career, maybe over the last 5 years, is there a belief, a habit, a behavior that has, really changed your life in a positive or even a negative way, I guess?
Yeah, it'd be positive. I really, as I got further and further, in my career, I realized that um, part of my role is to make a difference, right, into some people's
Yeah.
lives. And as I shifted to, it's not really all about me, I never really had that. I have a saying that says, it's amazing what you can get done if you don't stop to see who's watching. So I always spent time trying to cultivate a team, a culture. I think culture can eat strategy for breakfast. So if you don't have culture, right. But a positive attitude, a positive way of thinking, There's always a solution. We could just talk it through. It may not be what you want. It may not be what I want, but if it's the betterment for everybody, we've got to gain consensus and move forward. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge John Gordon fan. I don't know if you've follow or him, but if
Mhm.
not, I would suggest it. But it's he's actually spoken a couple of times to Tyson Foods, and so I really leaned on a lot of those connections, positivity. But if I just boil it down, I would say there's a positive approach that if we can just sit down, we'll figure this out. Again, it may not go the way I want it to go. There's no need to fight, argue, scream, and yell. Let's have a very good conversation about where we are really, and let's work, assume positive intent. Culture, create a culture of inclusion, create a culture of winning, create a culture of team, create a culture of we got each other's back and trust. And then, like I said, I think just the team aspect, I really, really believe that the power in a team is very, very strong. And I spent a lot of time in the last 5 years, a big team with a lot of change, but keep it going in a direction that, hey, you talk about last 5 years in food service, that COVID, right? I mean,
Yeah.
wow. So if you didn't have the right culture and the right team and the right attitude, man, it challenged you. So that's what I've kind of leaned on as I kind of closed out my career. And it's funny as I'm continuing to do some things, that's still what I'm focused on.
I could definitely feel like, just talking with you, your positivity, it's infectious. It pours through, and so I could see that, and I appreciate it. And I think also, yeah, building a culture where people want to work and where they want to be, a winning culture, it just helps. When someone shows up to work every day and they just hate it and they just talk negatively, that is also infectious in a not a good way.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot more energy to be negative.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. And I spent a lot of time communicating. That's one thing
Yeah.
too, that, absence of communication, people and team will form their own narrative. And so I was I read some recently, be as transparent as you possibly can.
Mm,
And, I think growing up, I remember some times that I didn't feel like that either the customer or sales or it's like, so I really learned that. I mean, I kind of use this phrase, but over communicate. And I
yeah,
think that's something that's carried throughout my career is, you know, bad news doesn't get better with age. So let's just talk about it. Right. And
absolutely.
let's communicate, let everybody know kind of to the best of your ability, what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. In our company, we try to over communicate as well. We're a privately held business, but we try to communicate our numbers and how we're doing to our team, to everybody on the team, and we build our bonus, our company bonus
Yeah.
around the company's overall performance. So we try to be transparent of, hey, this is where we're at. I think sometimes companies, they don't show or tell, and then a team member may say, well, I don't know what my role is on the team, but when
Yeah.
you're communicating and you're open, it kind of gives them like, okay, this is what I'm working towards, and it makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
I agree. I agree. Understand the strategy, where you're going, and then talk about results.
Looking far into the distance, into the future, what is something that you want to achieve, whether it's personally or professionally, that you haven't yet achieved?
Mhm. Well, I feel like I dedicated a lot of my time as I was managing my career. And this sort of year plus minus without that has been glorious. And so what I want to do is figure out in the second chapter, the back half, whatever you want to call it, how to make a difference, continuing to do things through teams and people. And it's taking on some directions that I did not necessarily see coming, but it's really, really fun. So, work, not so much. Time with my family and friends, very much. And so we are spending time doing things like that. And sometimes things just happen and fall in your lap. And it's because you're just kind of out doing what you said you were going to do.
Mhm.
And that, so really, as I look forward, it's not looking for 80 to 100 hours a week of stress, right? Because we don't work that much, but we're on all the time. So it has an impact. But it's more about just balancing going forward and helping, where my kids are in their lives. And of course, my wife, just And then we'll work a little bit here and there, but it's going to be things that make me happy, things that I think I can make a difference, and things that I want to be involved in. So I'm giving back and having a great time doing it.
Amazing. Well, Johnny, thank you for coming on here and being vulnerable and sharing. I really appreciate it. And the first thing I'm going to do when we hang up is I'm going to go look at Bentonville, Arkansas mountain biking.
Go check it out. Be sure to tell you hello, and it's been great talking to you, Nick.
It will do. Thanks, Johnny. Likewise.
Thank you.